I wish to welcome Leela Sampson and congratulate her for her opening remarks. They were really like a refreshing breath of air, and I was telling her and many of our panelists here that it was in fact such a comprehensive speech covering all the points we would have liked to bring here, that it could quite easily have been the speech that I would have made. So it is in the spirit of friendship that we talk to you and thank CII for arranging this very important interaction. Next year is going to be 100 years for the film industry. And like you yourself remarked, we are still guided by the Cinematograph Act of 1952. Clearly there is a case for the ministry to update the laws with regard to certification. All the points that you raised, from the logo to not censorship but certification, and later you said classification, are really like music to our ears. All the panelists have made extremely important points, so I will not reiterate them. I think I will concentrate a little bit on gender, because that's a perspective that hasn't been brought, because it is an issue that has worried many women. Mythology has a very important role to play in India. It's not like Greek mythology where it's a thing of the past. It actually has a very dominant influence in our lives today and shapes the aspirations of who our heroes and who our heroines are, unfortunately, for the women of India. From Sita as the quietly acquiescing wife, quietly surrendering to her husband's wishes as the ideal woman, we have traveled a long, long way to the slut walk that we are seeing that is happening. Clearly, in the depiction of women, there has been a sea change. The film industry has struggled with this. We have moved from a film in the 60s called Main Chup Rahungi. Remaining silent was considered a virtue for the woman. Till today, where Band Baja Barat was given as an example, where you have really the true woman. But as a society, we are still to come to terms with what the new woman is. We are willing to say, all right, the status quo should be changed, but to what extent, we haven't decided. There has been a huge moral outrage on obscenity, on film songs that are vulgarly shown, all of that. I have far less problem with that than I have of women falling at the feet of their husbands and asking for forgiveness. How there's a huge broad spectrum of sensibilities when it comes to women. How are we going to shape and determine that this is not merely a subjective choice, but there is a guideline that tells us what it is about women and what are the kinds of women we want to see? Because clearly in a democracy, it is an arena where contesting voices will necessarily play the field. And how are we going to do this without some filmmakers abrogating to themselves the power that we make good cinema, we make meaningful cinema, and so we will determine the norms? I think Amit made a very big point today when he said in a democracy, you have a right to make a good film and you have a right to make a bad film. You should have that right. Some people cannot decide this is the kind of film that should be made. Also, the strength of a principle is actually gauged when it does something which you're against. I remember when me, Nathuram Godse, got into trouble. It was a play. Everybody in Parliament got up and said it should be banned. It should be banned after it had been given a certificate by the censor board. And I said, much as I disagree with what it says, it has every right to be shown because it has got its certification. After that, whether you agree with it or not, you have to allow that to be said. And then law and order must remain a separate problem which the state must deal with, which repeatedly everybody has said today, that otherwise the censorship certificate becomes completely meaningless. So there has to be a great emphasis on law and order, because if I feel that a film offends my sensibility, then I should have a right to rally people around, stand in front of the theaters with posters and banners saying this is a terrible film, don't watch it, it does this, that and the other, but I cannot stamp on the right of the audience that wants to watch the film. You have to maintain a code where you say, all right, people have a right to protest, but they will do it peacefully and they will not rampage theaters. That is an extremely important thing that needs to be said. Now, we have to take into consideration the sensibilities of the artistic community by not eroding creativity and constantly evolving with contemporary standards of civil society. The challenge under which the CBFC operates in a country like India, which is multi-ethnic, multicultural, young and democratic, is more pronounced than in any other environment. In recent years, the film industry in India has grown both in size and substance, and the Indian film industry produces films for domestic consumption as well as for the Indian diaspora and the global audience. Therefore, unless the certification rules are dynamic in nature and understand the pulse of the people, there will be constant tension and disputes between the government and the film industry. I believe a more pragmatic approach needs to be identified and adopted if the industry seeks to achieve its full potential as a true global player. With the advent of its 100th year, I'm sure the stakeholders would put their heads together and come out with a practical solution. Now, much as I want to talk about freedom of expression, and as an artist I realize how important it is, and particularly when it's dealing with politically contentious issues, I do believe that there are no absolutes in freedom. That is the gray area. If there are no absolutes in freedom, how do you negotiate that space where you do not curb creativity and yet you protect the rights and the sensibilities of the people you are likely to offend? That is basically the issue.